Hi, Kristin Snowden.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Um, I'm going to look and see just because I like seeing the participants. So let me see that. Okay. Hold on. Let me go over here. Okay. Um, I'll just say it again. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. A really quick plug before I go on with my webinar is I have had a really high volume of people that have been seeking me out. And as Tammy was just talking about, asking for individual sessions and time. I mean, I'm hearing the overwhelming theme that we're struggling right now, and understandably so. So in an effort to kind of meet the higher demand, I'm going to start doing some very small kind of intimate, safe workshop groups. That way people feel safe enough to kind of share intimate details about their life with a very small group of people. If you're interested in that, I have information down on my website, kristinsnowden.com, about dates and times and costs. So basically there is limited space again because they're small groups, so I'd encourage you to register now for them. And if this one fills up, it's starting August 24th. I'll try to create some other ones depending on the demand and what you guys are looking for. But a lot of people write and say, I can't imagine me sharing my stuff in a group setting because I'm in such crisis. And most of the time it's because they, most of the time it's because they've been hurt by relationships, they've been exploited or abused or lied to. So the idea of like going to make themselves vulnerable to a group of other people is really frightening to them. But I've been running groups for over a decade now, and I actually think that's where most of the healing and power and insight and community and safety is developed, is when we kind of dig through our stuff in a group setting. I will caveat by saying it's not therapy. It's going to be lecture series and education mixed in with the ability to dive deeper into the content that we're talking about, open discussion, Q&A. A lot of people say, hey, I saw this video. How does this apply to my life? Basically, like it sounds right, but how is it showing up? So again, just go to kristinsnowden.com for more information. And I'm here for you, like seeking integrity. It's been a really great, more than we ever realized it could have been, great source for all of you. And our goal is to help people to get the word out and support all of you in your struggles. So
I want to affirm what you're saying about the group too. So we've been doing work groups. So Kristin and I had a longer conversation about this, and because she is getting so many people that are asking, she cannot meet the demand individually, but this is a format that has worked for seeking integrity. For example, we have a men's work group. It's limited to 25 men online, and it's facilitated by our program manager, Jason Swilling, or by Scott Brassard, who's our curriculum development person. All things written, etc. He's involved with. But these guys are facilitating going through the Sex Addiction 101 workbook in this work group. I always, and what I was just looking at the comments today, and overwhelmingly what you're saying, Kristin, is what they talked about connecting with the group, being in a learning environment with other people. And I think it reduces the shame, but and normalizes to some level, but it also was something that they may not have even thought of. They hear someone else share and they go, oh my gosh, me too. And so I just think it expands the opportunity to learn in a structured environment. So if you're interested, I did put in the chat, kristinsnowden.com. I would invite you to go to the website and check that out. I think it will be, I think it's going to fill, and she's going to have to offer it again. That's my thought on this. But, these opportunities to connect in a meaningful way are really valuable and will help us all during this unique time. So
unique time, very well said. So speaking of unique times, as we continue to be exposed to our partners and our family and our loved ones under a whole lot of stress and no sign of it relenting in any way, I'm going to talk about a subject that many of you seem to be really intrigued by, which is this concept around attachment science. So kind of understanding the way that we connect with other people. I'm sorry, the way that we connect with our caregivers in our first several years, how it wires us in a certain way that leads us to seek out certain people that we're attracted to, certain friendships. And it can be a really interesting kind of map or navigation or system of understanding why do I find myself drawn to these types of people? Why do I find myself behaving this certain way in relationships regularly? It might put a kind of language to the patterns that you find yourself in. And so I always say the first step to change is awareness, right? As we know, step one is saying like, I'm powerless to this and my life's become unmanageable. So understanding that these patterns aren't working for you anymore, and understanding the context of what might have informed these patterns of relating to other people can help you kind of make the countermeasure and change it. And so this is basically going to be a lecture on trauma, attachment, and seeking integrity. So seeking integration of all of these systems, because that's what trauma does, is it really cuts off your ability to be integrated. So attachment science or attachment systems or attachment styles is sometimes what you hear, is highly plugged into our survival system. We have a really primal need to attach. So we feel in deep, when we're babies, to be without someone touching us, and that skin to skin contact and eye contact and words coming at us is to create fear, deep fear. And so we have really strong primal needs to connect with other people. We're neurobiologically wired to want to connect with people beyond early childhood. And when we are without connection with others, when we are isolated or rejected or abandoned, that is when we fail to thrive. So that is when we have high distress, where we have mental health struggles, where we have increased levels of disease, early death. If any of you read Rob Weiss's Codependence book, he talks a lot about that pair bonding, having companions, having a community, having a village around you is highly correlated with health and success in life. And so to go back to how we can apply how we were raised to how we find our primary partners, is there's this misunderstanding that you marry your mom or dad. It's not that you try to like reenact, oh, mom did this to me or dad did that to me, or, I never could please my mom, so I married a man who I could never please. Or, I married someone who was really big and aggressive like my father. It's not so much about that you seek out your caretaker and try to reenact that, maybe sometimes, but it's that we seek out the familiar. Humans by nature are what we call xenophobic. So we're afraid of what's unknown to us. And I think, that's a big conversation right now with the whole diversity, Black Lives Matter stuff, is that there's this underpinning of we feel safer. Our system loves predictability. Our system loves to be able to see things that look similar, act similarly. When you move out of that, we feel very unsafe, very uncomfortable. So you could write a list of, if you're out there dating or figuring out who you want as a partner, or you're currently trying to strongly change the dynamics within your partnership, you could write out some bullet points and say, okay, this is what I want a partnership to look like ideally. But find that that's not what you're attracted to, that's not what you find intrigued by, that's not what you want to have sex with, and so it's really interesting to see that we have this really strong neurobiological, psychobiological drive to go towards what we know, even if it's the death of us, even if it's to our own insanity. That doesn't mean that your brain can't be rewired to kind of realize that, I've gone that path, it's not worked for me, and I need to make some adjustments. And we're going to talk about that. That's when our system becomes integrated. And then you want to kind of change the system. So let's start with what we think a healthy relationship should look like. This is what we'd call secure attachment or secure functioning. Should look like, so any relationship, when you're thinking of relationships with your parents, with your children, with your partners, with your friendships, with your colleagues, secure attachment should be one where you feel within that exchange, within that relationship, fully integrated with your thoughts and values and feelings. So you and those around you kind of say what you mean what you say. There's an understanding that this is a safe place where you can do that. You are able to kind of fully experience all your feelings, mad, sad, glad, afraid, depressed, hurt. And you let them have their space to have their feelings. So maybe a really great example is passive aggression, right? So that's someone who's not integrated with their feelings. So I had a bad day at work, and instead of me being able to come home to my partner and say, I'm sorry, I'm already on high stress levels right now because my boss sent me something that kind of made me feel like he threw me under the bus. Instead, I just kind of shout and I bite my husband's head off and I get angry at him when he doesn't know where we want to have dinner tonight. That is someone who does not have their feelings and experiences fully integrated. So it's my responsibility to understand what's going on. That's secure functioning for me, my side of the street, to keep it clean. And then secure functioning between another person is also having it be safe enough where that person can allow me the space to say that I'm in a state of struggle, right? So that's secure functioning. That will send off lots of feel-good hormones. It's like, you're safe, Kristin. Everything's going okay. And because of that safety, that secure foundation, you also feel secure enough to go outside the relationship, explore things like hobbies, friendships, literally go travel and go do things outside of the relationship, your job, your career, but then also feel safe enough to do things within the system of the relationship. So you still want to come back and seek comfort, to have companionship with that person where you kind of share what that's, what happened today at work or what happened with the kids today. So there's this flexibility is kind of what they call it. You don't feel frozen or paralyzed like, oh, I can't go out and play with my friends because my husband will get mad at me. It's this flexibility to know that I can go out and go get my needs met over here, but then I can also come back to this relationship and get my needs met here. And so because of that too, there's also what we call the ability to self-regulate, so self-soothe, and then the ability to seek out co-regulation. So if you've watched any of my webinars before, you know that because we're so neurobiologically driven to connect with other people, we have these kind of amazing magical skills to actually, as I joke, use our powers for good or evil. So Tammy and I can start talking about animals or hiking or things that we have common interests in and laugh. And like if you checked our heart rates and our stress hormones, they would kind of be balanced and we'd be calmer. We'd see each other's eyes and feel safe from that. We can use that regulatory system for good or for evil, right? You can come into a home where someone is completely not integrated and you don't know if they're angry or mad or what's going on with them. And so it makes you kind of walk on eggshells and you don't know how to show up in the relationship. So you don't want to use them for co-regulation. You don't want to seek them out for safety and for a calming, grounding source. So that's a really great sign for secure functioning is am I able to self-soothe myself, self-regulate myself, go for walks, take deep breaths, process things, and am I also able to seek it out from these other securely attached people that I'm securely attached with? And are these people ones who feel safe enough to come to me to seek that out, right? Can I hold space for someone else to kind of be upset or be angry, and I can hold space for that? I don't need to fix it. I just need to be a compassionate witness to it. So, and then within that system, a secure functioning system will be able to practice resiliency and or healthy coping skills when faced with distress, stress, trauma, shame, right? So they have, because I have this flexibility and I have the ability to know that I have these skills to kind of calm myself and soothe myself and seek out shame resiliency, and I know this person in my life is a place that can co-regulate me. We combined have tools to make the next best choice, make the next healthy choice of how to move through this stressful moment. So, you know, sadly, there's probably going to be a lot of divorce and relationship breakups that are going to occur during this time, because when the relationship and the attachment and the security was being challenged, kind of going through a stress test, it's just not there. It's, you know, there's not a secure base that we can be co-regulators of each other, and that we can help each other practice resiliency and healthy ways to get through these stressful moments, to kind of down-regulate and comfort ourselves in a time of uncertainty, lack of control, fear, all of the above. A huge part of secure functioning is that there is the presence and willingness to repair when things have gone wrong. So that's one of the number one things to be able to see. Do I seek out these people for co-regulation? And when someone falls short, when I fall short, so maybe I was passive aggressive when I came home, or I bit your head off because I was stressed about something else, did I show the kind of humbleness and willingness to say, you know what, the way I came home was not okay. I'm really sorry about that. Is there a willingness to repair? Or when your partner or whoever this loved one is comes at you and says, you know, when I was trying to share a story with you and whatever you said to me, it made me feel like it was my fault. Like I was the bad person. And I was trying to make myself vulnerable by sharing this story with you. And all I did is walk away with like feeling like you said, yeah, you should feel bad because you're bad. So, I mean, that's really generalizing. I wish we all had those amazing language skills to communicate that way. But what I'm just trying to say is that, are you low enough on your defenses that you can let someone else experience a need for a repair attempt, saying, this experience didn't feel right to me. I need to go back and revisit it. Can we? And can you kind of humble yourself to know that while maybe you didn't mean to be wrong and do wrong or say the wrong thing, I experienced it that way, and can we repair that? And last thing, secure functioning is all about, is this a person where I can be fully seen and heard and allow them to be fully seen and heard? So is this a space where I feel safe enough? I mean, it is so bold in a relationship and so vulnerable to ask for needs to be met. I mean, especially again, right now, because it's so scary and everyone seems so unsafe and uncertain. So asking your needs to be met is really scary and vulnerable. That's a really great sign that you have secure functioning, that you say, hey, I just need to like not see anybody, and let's watch a movie together, and let's not talk because I'm really overwhelmed with like what life's looking like right now. And the other person can say, yeah, sure. Or then if you want to talk, let me know. So those are all a big umbrella way of saying that when you are secure functioning with other people, all of your thoughts and feelings and understandings of the other people are fully integrated. So I am 100% aware of what's happening to my mind and body in my experience when I go into this relationship, when I talk with them, when I'm present with them. I'm not dissociating because it's so traumatizing. I'm not spending more time in our arguments and how I've been done wrong, or fantasizing about other people and other things. Like I'm able to be fully present with them. And I'm also able to practice empathy and compassion in order to basically better understand what their story is, how they're showing up. That, you know, that when they hurt me, I might give them the benefit of the doubt and say, did you mean to say that? Because I heard it this way. And it really hurt my feelings, instead of just kind of add it to this narrative that this person woke up this morning to ruin my life. And here's just more examples of it. Right. And so there's a couple other, I want to go over what a couple other kind of famous or popular attachment styles are. There's 3 other more common versions of way ways people seek attachment with other people. There's lots of different names for them. Each therapist has a different name for them, but so this is based on like the Dan Siegel interpersonal neurobiology stuff. But there's two organized versions of way people attach. So meaning, let me explain this really fast. In the first several years, you're given lots of examples of efforts to connect with your caregivers and how they respond. And a lot of people don't like the term attachment style because it's not a style, it's a strategy. It's an adaptive coping skill of like, I went out, I sought this connection with my caretakers, with my loved ones, and this is the feedback I got. And so I'm going to adjust my life and my behaviors around that to adapt. So it's not meant to be a pejorative, pathological problem. It's just, again, giving you that roadmap to say, this is why you learn to respond to people the way that you do. It seems like it's not really working with, for you anymore. It was adaptive and strategic and worked for a period of time, but now it's not. So maybe now we need to change this system for you. So the first one is organized attachment, but it's insecure. It's also called dismissive, avoidant attachment. So it basically comes from, there's not any obvious neglect or abuse. In fact, sometimes people will say it's the opposite, that there's too much of a parent interacting with them. So some people will explain it as a parent will kind of make you their partner and be too involved and too engaged. But so this attachment style doesn't come from the parent was abandoning, the parent was rejecting, but it basically says that they experience premature independence, a drive to disconnect when they should be seeking out dependence. Like, again, the primal desire in all of us is to want to connect with other people, to be warm bodies, to have them see us and hear us and be seen and heard and have that reciprocated. But stuff happened to them in their childhood that maybe made it undesirable for them to kind of make them want to push everybody away. That, like, I like you right to this point. So sometimes it's like an over-enmeshed parent that kind of wants too much and asks for too much, and that doesn't feel good for them. So they kind of like, I love having people around me, but I want them to kind of stay over here. The kind of story that they'll tell themselves is like, I've tried to get my needs met, but my caregiver doesn't appropriately respond when I ask for that. So I'm just going to meet my own needs. I'm just kind of going to be my own island. And so the way I respond to the disappointment and of like my caretakers falling short in the way that I need them is I'm going to increase my desire to disconnect from other humans. And I'm going to cope with that by kind of forgetting about relationships. So one thing that's really interesting is that that Dan Siegel was saying that when you do attachment interviews, these types of people will say, oh, well, relationships don't really matter to me. And then at the same time say that I don't really remember details about my relationships. So kind of these like catch-22s where it's like, well, if they don't matter to you, how do they not matter to you if you're not even remembering them? So meaning that it's kind of their coping skill that they block out memories of like attachment to other people and intimacy and connection with others. That's kind of how they get through it to stay as an island. Does that make sense? The consequence of a partner being married to an avoidant attached person is that they feel usually pretty lonely. And that, again, like I said, is the coping skill of the avoidant of kind of like, I don't have relationships or they don't matter that much to me and I don't really remember them, is they don't connect with trauma, abuse, or neglect. So they're kind of the people that are like, they block it out. They don't struggle with it. It just didn't happen. And they kind of go on. So then the next common attachment is what we call organized, insecure, but this has several different names: anxious, preoccupied, or ambivalent attachment. We call it all those three different things because they have little pieces of it involved. That's when the parent shows up with a lot of kind of fear and non-integrated ways of managing themselves in the relationship. So they kind of aren't able to show up consistently. One minute they're ready to like have fun, and then the next minute they are curled up in a fetal position and they're not able to help themselves. So you get this really insecure experience of connecting with your caretaker. But what's interesting and opposite of the avoidant is where the avoidant just increased their desire to just disconnect. The anxious, ambivalent, preoccupied, attached person, that response increases their desire to connect. So where one type of person coped with their caretaker's, flaws by just disconnecting, I'm going to become an island. The anxious, ambivalent, preoccupied experiences them falling short by, you know what, I'm just going to start running on that treadmill and I'm going to be more, do more, be more clingy, and connect more. So it's like, it's called ambivalent because it's like, I want a caretaker, but I'm just not sure if they're going to show up for me. But it doesn't make them disconnect. It makes them try harder and work harder. And what's interesting is that too, whereas the avoidant attached is forgets more about what relationships mean to them, and they kind of block it out, and they don't think about trauma or abuse or things that happen in their childhood or past relationships or current relationships. They just kind of block it out. The anxious, ambivalent, preoccupied attached will be hyper focused on it. So hyper focused on what's going on in the relationship, how they've been harmed, how they need to make it better. That's that preoccupied concept, is they're preoccupied with the relationships. They can't stop ruminating about it. And so I thought that was really interesting. And so the third is a very small population. Luckily, it's highly, highly correlated with trauma, abuse, neglect, but this is the disorganized attachment. It's when these kids and then eventually adults have highly disintegrated, so unintegrated pieces of themselves, unintegrated memories. They don't know what their emotions are. They don't know how to feel. They don't know how to show up how they're feeling. They don't know how to seek out relationships because there's been so much confusing abuse. People who are supposed to love you the most have harmed you the most. And I'm in this constant push and pull. We've talked about betrayal trauma and how betrayal trauma can look so chaotic and confusing and roller coaster. One minute you're begging them to be with you, and the next minute you're asking them that you're screaming at them and saying, I never want to see you again, and you're the most horrible person in the world. That's disorganized attached people. That's the majority of their life, what is because of the neglect, abuse. There's often strong addiction in the family, physical abuse, a strong abandonment, presence of abandonment, incongruent behavioral strategies, struggles and conflict in the relationship. They, as a consequence, struggle with developing their own relationships, as you can imagine. And by the way, it doesn't necessarily need to be, he beat me, he harmed me. So it doesn't even necessarily need to be that the caretakers purposely set out to abuse you or harm you. Sometimes you could have viewed the trauma and violence and fear indirectly. So domestic violence in the home, or he was such a drunk or an alcoholic that he was never emotionally available to me. So it doesn't necessarily need to be stuff that happened to you and at you. You could have experienced it indirectly by just being a witness to it. Luckily, if you have any of those symptoms, the brain can repair, and you can make steps towards going back to, like what I said, that secure attachment, secure functioning type of experience. You just have to work on those kind of things. So what you would have to work on, and these are my final points, is you have to work on integrating yourself, right? Figuring out who you are. So not considering first the relationship, that bring in the lens of the relationship in a moment, but like, who am I standalone? Who's Kristin? What are my passions? What are my priorities? What are my values? What are my non-negotiables? What does sadness look like to me? Do I feel safe to experience sadness? Do I feel safe to experience anger? Am I willing to get mad? Do I have resentments? Kind of that, step 4, full inventory of all the stuff that's going on. My fears, understand my story better. Who am I? What do I want from life? But then you move it into the context of the relationships that you're trying to create secure attachment with. Do you understand their story? Do they understand their story? Do they have integrated emotions and feelings? How do you guys want to show up with each other? How do you express your emotions? How do you make sense of life? By the way, not just cerebrally. How do you physically move into life? How do you feel it? Where do you feel it in your body? You can figure these things out, obviously, through therapy. Again, group work. Group work can be phenomenal from this because you watch other people do it and you go, oh, wow, I struggle with that too. Reflection, journal writing, I said therapy, go through and experience maybe trauma that you've kind of been stuck in, that have been stuck points, and see if you can work through it and kind of understand the story going on there. And then with partners, that's why a lot of this like sex addiction recovery and recovery in general is about becoming integrated, understanding your feelings, understand how you want to cope with it, understand why you did it in the first place, explaining it to that partner so they can understand it, understand how you responded to it. It's all integration. So it all can become more integrated into our brain, and that feels safer. And that's it.
But that's great, and that's a lot. So, I was thinking when you were talking about the secure attachment, I think I really believe in active addiction. I'm hearing all the time that, the addict isn't safe, and for lots of real reasons, not excuses, but reasons, they are wounded and they do need to heal that. So, but I appreciated that you in particular said, with work, you can change that. And I thought too, I think that there are, even if we can find, well, this relationship is healthy and safe,
Mm-hmm.
and I do feel secure in that, so I can learn to apply that in other relationships. So even if it isn't with your significant other because they are in active addiction, or they are wounded from your addiction or whatever reason, but there is, healing is possible. You can shift the story, and I think the ability, like you said, to be able to be real and vulnerable, that's what we're all working towards or looking for, I hope, with all of this. So for those of you that are here, I'm thrilled you're here. We have some questions, so we'll start with those. I'm almost sure that my husband is a narcissist. I left him and came to my mom's house. He always ignores me, treats me with silent treatment, and says that everything is my fault because of my trauma. I feel so desperate. How can I deal with him and with my trauma in a healthy way?
Well, first of all, that's very painful and scary. And it probably took a lot of courage to take a break and go over to your mom's house. That's a really big question that is going to be difficult to answer in this kind of context. I know so little, but I understand why you would feel so desperate, because I think the number one resounding term that I hear when people are in relationships like this is just deep confusion, right? It's like, I love this person and I experience a lot of fear with the idea of not being with them anymore, but being with them is like the most painful, mind numbing kind of crazy carousel I've ever been on in my life. And so all those things, like I said, the number one goal for you is to become more integrated and aware and mindful of what your personal experience is, right? You can't control him, so you can't get him to maybe stop gaslighting you or blaming you, or maybe he only has one emotion, which is anger, but underneath it is hurt and fear and sadness and rejection or things like that. All you can do is fully become aware and do your work of, how does this relationship make me feel? What is safe for me right now? What is making me not feel safe right now? Safety is the number one concern. I think for when you feel like you're married to a narcissist, sometimes reality can kind of be spun upside down. So meaning when there's not much accountability on the other side, and there's a lot of kind of one-sided blame, you're the problem, it's your fault. That's when I think I encourage group work the most, is, to be going to these 12-step type support groups or betrayed partner support groups, where you have to kind of seek out these secondary opinions of, hey, this is what's going down. I'm having a really hard time because he's saying it's my trauma and that's why all this stuff is going wrong. I'm trying to do this and this and this to kind of to work out my trauma, but this is still what I'm experiencing. A, talking that out helps integrate it in your mind, and B, kind of seeing other people's face expressions, hearing their input and thoughts from an outside point of view, and then also hearing them share similar stories can all contribute to you becoming a little bit more integrated and having more clarity in what's going on, like what's happening, what is this about? What do I want from this? What are my goals? What's working, what's not working, etc.
So I want to invite you personally to the Betrayed Partner group that is on Wednesdays at 12:30 Pacific time. So that's today at 12:30 on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. So I hear so much in this. Again, like Kristin said, there's a lot in a short amount of space. But first of all, I hope you find support for your trauma, regardless of all of this other stuff. And there are great therapists that really can help. There's different modalities. I personally have experienced EMDR. It was very helpful for me. So there's lots. And then if he's in active addiction, which it sure sounds like, most people aren't true personality disorder narcissists, but every addict is a narcissist. We're all, we're all into we've got to be able to do our addiction and we're going to blame shift. And of course it's your fault, because I don't want to have to look at my responsibility in this, and I don't want to have to change my behavior. But if I can blame you, then I'm justified. Because it's like, and I'm not making excuses and I'm not making light of this truly, but this is so typical. So I'm glad you're safe. I'm glad you're at your mom's house. I invite you to, I'm thrilled you're here. But if he's in active addiction, then, until and unless he gets, qualified help and support to change, he's going to be stuck in that. I just shared yesterday with someone, the ASAM, American Society of Addiction Medicine, about the definition of addiction. And it doesn't matter which form it takes. It's a chronic disease. And unless, it's like diabetes. If you don't get help, with diabetes, you can monitor your sugar intake, you can monitor what you eat, you can monitor your weight, you can do all these things, and you can live a really normal quote unquote life, but without taking care of yourself, the consequences of diabetes are really bad. And so like that with addiction, for those of us that choose to get into recovery, we can do things on a daily basis. This is one of them, where we're connecting with good recovery things, and we can change, So I'm glad you're safe. Please lean into the support that's available. Please get help, true professional help for your trauma, because it sounds like there's older stuff and probably some betrayal trauma on top of that. If you need names of people, email me, Tammy, TAMI @seekingintegrity.com. Tell me where you're located. I'll do my best to help you find somebody. Take some time for you. Be really kind to yourself. And I'd love for you to plug into group things that will help you heal. I think that would be great. So.
Yeah. And someone added in, what addiction do you think that he has? I mean, obviously from the story, she doesn't say he's abusing substances or he's having, chronic affairs. But what Tammy and I are talking about is there's this concept that's like called dry drunk. So maybe even if someone stops abusing alcohol, they still have these, the rooms might call them like character defects, but it's these tendencies to just not be able to own their part in any kind of thing. So there's lots of, she said, blame shifting, lots of resentments that someone hasn't really connected with and been able to speak out. A lot of like, I'm the victim versus kind of doing that trauma work to better integrate and understand the story of what's going on. So there's a lot of like people in true recovery have done this work that even if my partner has trauma and is struggling, that I can still show up with the appropriate emotions, right? So not in an abusing way, not in a, neglectful way. You know, she said that he will ignore her and give her the silent treatment. That is neglectful, because it's like, you're supposed to be my partner. We're supposed to be working towards co-regulation of each other, and I'm supposed to feel safe enough to show up. But I don't even know what to get from the silent treatment. Like, I know you're upset at me and I know you don't want to talk to me, but like, what did I do? How do I repair? What do we fix? What did you have an issue with? I don't know any of that from the silent treatment. I just know we're bad, and I don't even want to enter that household because I just don't know what I'm going to get. That is not integrated, right? That is not predictable. That's not a safe space where you guys are kind of teammates that work towards co-regulation and working through crises and problems. So that's kind of what I mean by that. Is that is behavior that also will coincide with someone who has an addiction, because then they'll go seek out relief from all of that in, you know, acting out kind of way.
Yeah. And, you know, unfortunately, or fortunately, or whatever, my world is very much about sex addiction, porn addiction, intimacy disorders, you know, co-occurring. So, you know, I probably naturally go to that is so classic behavior for a sex addict, porn addict, whatever. You know, it's I'm pushing you away because I want I want to be able to go do whatever it is I want to do that's going to dissociate me. You know, I'm going to numb out, I'm going to do whatever, and it's justifiable because look, you're so, you know, it's all about you.
Your
You've
trauma.
given me the
You're so hypervigilant. You're so depressed.
yes. You've given me the perfect reason and justification to go do what I wanted to do anyway. And that's what I mean by blame shifting. So next question. So for those of you, if you're putting questions in, if you can put them in the questions, it really helps me stay on point. So could you talk about whether it's even possible or even worth it to do the work with an avoidant partner? I have been with my husband for 13 years. I've come to understand how unhealthy our relationship is in the past 6 years or so, as I've gone deeper into understanding my own attachment style and ways in which our relationship has no real foundation. He has said he doesn't know what a healthy relationship is. He doesn't see any problems and tends to avoid or numb out instead of addressing issues. I feel so apart from him in terms of reality of our relationship. What does healing even look like when you're the only one who thinks it's needed?
Right. So to answer your first question is, do you think it's worth it to engage with someone who has an avoidant tendency? And you may be asking the wrong person, because obviously I'm in this field because I believe in humanity. I believe that we are all deeply flawed, and when given the right tools and education and language, and also when we've suffered enough from it, we will want to move into a greater space of understanding and complexity and connection with other humans. So I know that sounds very overly optimistic to many of you, but I've seen it. Like, I see it many times. And so I always think it's worth it, especially, you know, Rob will get into the fact that relationships, when they have a lot of time, a lot of history, they have children, shared friends, some shared interests in some way, those will be the ties that bind when you're not really into that person per se. You know, I'm not a big fan of you, but I didn't mind some of the pieces of our life together. And sometimes that can be motivation enough to hang in there. But the big problem that I have is your last sentence, which was, what does healing look like when you're the only one who thinks it's needed? One of the number one things that's required for change is for someone to be owning, this isn't working for me anymore. That, you know, again, my part in it. What have I done? Like, I get that I'm with an imperfect partner, but how can I contribute to this system, or how can I improve this system, and how can I take some responsibility for what I feel like I can take responsibility for? That's when the magic happens. That's when the big, bold, dramatic changes occur, when both people in the system are doing that. Getting there is extremely difficult, but I have seen it happen when just one person kind of starts changing the system, and then it stops working for the other person. And that level of stress for them when it's not working for them, and the same kind of rigmarole and toxicity and patterns break, that makes them tend to kind of shift at that point. but those are a lot of contingencies. Sometimes people never get there. Do you have
So
anything to add?
I do, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm going to share this, but I'm going to. So a really long time ago, I was married to someone else, and we were in crisis, and we went to a therapist, and you know, I talked about what I wanted for a relationship, and my therapist said that's how it's supposed to be. And my now ex-husband said, you know, if she wants to change, she can change. I'm happy with who I am. And I knew for me, like that wasn't going to work. That just, and we, you know, we are obviously no longer together now. My current relationship completely different, you know, and we do, you know, like all the vulnerabilities, you know, I can say something or do something, you know, and we have space to be able to repair that, and we don't expect each other to be perfect, and you know, all of that. So I'm disheartened by the, you know, actually it resonates with me, you know. You know, I mean, my ex absolutely said, if she wants to change, that's fine, but I'm happy with who I am. Boom, you know, and so dismissive of even trying to work on that. So I don't know what's right for you. For me, you know, for me, that was the clear sign that, you know, I could no longer be in that relationship. So, but I also agree with what Kristin said. I have seen relationships where, you know, shifting and changing, you know, yourself, you know, does make it uncomfortable, and then there is an opportunity. So I also believe in humanity. I wish good things for my ex. He's 2 more relationships down the pike, and I hope he's super happy. It's all good. So can't believe I just shared that. So, okay. Thanks.
I am grateful for you for sharing that.
No, that was a hard one. So, okay. Thanks for your webinar, Kristin. Can you talk about the dynamics of someone with secure attachment style on discovery of a 20-year sex addiction by our avoidant husband? In terms of attachment style, how can a betrayed partner remain secure, return to secure attachment?
Right. I mean, the tough part of that is that you've been living in a world of deceit and gaslighting, and someone who's been really invested in you not seeing who they really are and putting up a front, right? So I'm sure, just be careful not to let that bleed into your other relationships. Do realize that they were invested in lying to you and not letting you see who they really were. That doesn't mean that that's how it's been with your other relationships. Is like, you can have secure attachment with your family members or siblings or coworkers or some really great friends, and those are going to be the people that you're going to need to kind of hang on during this difficult time, because who knows who this person is, this 20-year sex addict. That is yet to be seen, right? If this person's going to stick to the way that the sex addict's going to, you know, has no problem and is going to continue the way that that person's going to continue, you have no control of that. If that person continues down the road of recovery, you can kind of sit back and see, is this someone who is being vulnerable, is willing to share his or her thoughts and feelings? Is his and her coping skills getting better? Do they have a better understanding and an integrated understanding of why they sought out those coping skills to begin with? Do they own that they have the problem? Do they understand how they gaslight? Is there a humbleness? Is there a surrenderness to the, are they willing to kind of do what other people are asking them to do to get recovery? Those are all things that are showing that they're possibly moving more towards a secure functioning. But like I said, don't let, if you were performing in a more secure functioning and you feel like you could check off all those things I listed with other relationships, then continue engaging and connecting with them. Secure functioning doesn't account for the fact that someone could be a diabolical liar, right? Like, could completely give off the air of being, you know, a great coper, a great communicator, and then they have this whole second life that you weren't aware of. I mean, I've seen that as well. So how can you remain secure and return to secure attachment? You probably first will need to do it with the people who weren't the perpetrator of betrayal, and see where your betrayed partner, you know, your cheating partner, how they respond and act.
I agree, you know, and I was thinking, and I don't know this, but I am very curious now if, I wonder if addicts in general, you know, have attachment issues. I think so. You know, Dr. Rob and I have talked
I
about,
mean, that's
yeah, but like where on the scale would they be? Would they perceive that they have secure attachment? But I was like, I bet, you know, I bet we're all avoidant and doing, you know, things because
absolutely.
we're not, we don't have the tools, like all of those things you shared. We didn't get that when we were, you know, young, so we didn't learn that, but we can, you know. So yeah, you don't say in here whether, you know, he is on a recovery journey or not, but you know, I think I'm living proof that, you know, you can change and you can create, you know, the space for healthy attachment. And I see that all the time. I honestly really, really do. For people that are actually working on changing, you know, they can become trustworthy. They can, you know, they can learn to securely attach. It's a process, but you know, with the right help and support, we actually can make it. So.
Some of my favorite people I've ever met in my life, who I'm just in awe of, I find out they're in recovery, right? Because again, it's attraction, not promotion. So they don't start off with like, "Hi, I'm 20 years sober," but they will say and be these people that I'm like, "Who are you?" Like, I want to go to there. I admire their honesty, their willingness to have uncomfortable conversations, to own when they fall short. I mean, they are such, like, their personalities are so rich. Like, I don't know what else to say about them, but like the richness of like who they are as humans. And then I find out that they're, you know, 20 years sober in recovery. And I'm just like, I'm not surprised at this point, because there is something that comes from it that I can't explain. But when they get there, all bets are off. All trauma, pathological, attachment style issues, those are all out the door because they are new humans at that point.
And you don't have to wait for 20 years. I want
No.
to give you, no, I want to give you hope. I mean, you know, like the first, I'm going to be real, the first couple of years, it very much is, you know, baby steps and, you know, and challenges. But, you know, the more we learn, the more we are attracted to wanting it to be that way. I do not do well. I used to live in chaos, you know, like that was my norm. I do not do well anymore with my guts being in churning and, you know, all of that. You know, I want, you know, I want serenity. I want, you know, I want to feel, you know, connected. You know, I don't want to be disconnected in chaos. So we learn, and it's a process. And, you know, I continue my journey. You know, like I'm again, I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm seeing my therapist later today, and I'm thinking I'm going to talk to her about why do I get so nervous, you know, when, you know, the last couple of minutes, but also clearly I have some emotion about, you know, that whole thing. And I'm like, I've got stuff to talk about, you know. Well, great. You know, I'd rather talk about it than churn. So anyway, so I love recovery people too, because we're always continuing to work on being truer, better people. So, okay, next question. Hello, ladies. Female recovering addict. Yay. 2 years and 4 months clean. Awesome. Currently working on my 12 step. So I've been in a relationship with another recovering addict for same 2 years clean. When the pandemic broke out, he dumped me. 2 months, no contact. Then we got back together, starting coming to these webinars. It was 2 months of everything working fine. Then a month ago, he told me he needed to be alone. I gave him 3 days. Then my fear of abandonment got the best of me and I broke up with him. 24 hours later, we got back together. He reassured me he wanted to be with me. And then the next week he told me he was going for a weekend trip with his buddy. So again, I lashed out, threatened him that if he was going, he might not have a girlfriend. 3 days without speaking. I call him up on Sunday. This is the exact chaos that I don't tell
Yeah.
you. I can't do this anymore. So I hear what you're saying. I'm so glad you're here. It gets better.
And that you're being so honest about back and
It
forth,
gets so
because
better.
thank
So,
you. You are
yes,
demonstrating to everyone what they all do, by the way. Like, they
yes.
understand it,
This
but
is
you have
me.
the courage to write it out. And I'm like,
Yes,
it's amazing.
yes. This is me before, and so like, yeah. So I'm not shaming. I'm thrilled you're here. He doesn't feel free to be with me because of my anger. Oh, we can talk about that. I told him I feel the same about his jealousy, and he told me he was having doubts about the relationship. Let's see. Let me. Oh, this is long. I'm gonna. So I don't trust him. The behavior sounds to me like he is using. I'm confused and feeling helpless. I haven't returned the call because I'm afraid it's been 2 days. So he went on the trip, and then on the 8th day he called me back. So let's chat. Do you have the gist of it?
I think, yeah. I mean, what you're
Yeah.
demonstrating really well is this really brutal push-pull. This is the overwhelming theme I see. You don't feel safe, right? Our body loves predictability. Re-listen to my secure functioning. I don't hear that anywhere. I don't hear this is a safe place to show up. This is a safe place for him to say what he wants to say. There's a lot of, I don't like this, I'm leaving. My body feels so unsafe without you that I kind of grab at you because I just need to like calm this down to not feel so alone and so fearful. So, I mean, what I would encourage you to maybe do, I hope, and I don't know your story, but I appreciate you sharing, and your willingness to share this like shows how much courage you have. So I just want to validate that. Like, you're a badass for being able to come to these groups and share your story. But I'd encourage you to maybe check out some Love Addicts or SLAA type recovery programs, because what's in there is again, the core is your body is feeling very unsafe. And that it sounds like you're kind of grabbing at him and he'll grab at you, kind of almost like as a security blanket, like a coping skill, versus like being able to really want to truly find space and vulnerability for you guys to be two different people who enrich each other's lives in a like a healthy, stable, co-regulatory way. That's a really quick nutshell to it, but Love Addiction and Sex and Love Addicts, like 12 Steps, talk a lot about that. It's kind of this idea of sometimes your boyfriend or girlfriend are the drug, you know, the push pull of like, I love you, stay with me, but then you kind of realize I'm more in love with the idea of you because a lot of the things that you say actually hurt me, and you actually don't show up for me the way that I want someone to show up. And I don't like myself when I'm with you, but I need you. And it's this really tough push pull that happens where you can kind of dig into it and get a lot more answers to this.
Yeah, yes. You know, and she, you know, she went on, you know, they've been together 2 years, but I have a feeling even during those 2 years, like there was, you know, all those undercurrents of, you know, so it while it feels like 2 years and then all of a sudden things fell apart, I'm thinking that there's been stuff all along, because if you were really secure with this relationship, those would be little speed bumps, not, you know, everything, you know, blowing up. So,
Yeah. Because don't forget, secure attachment too gets tested during trials and tribulations. You know, I thought I had a really great, secure, normal relationship until a couple gnarly things happened externally in our relationship and really kind of brought to the surface how unhealthy our communication skills were, some kind of untapped and unidentified resentments that we weren't processing, really poor ways of showing our emotions to each other, like we didn't even know what we didn't even know. And so sometimes your mind will be blown that you will think that you were in this secure attached environment, but then when you listen again to how I define secure functioning and secure attachment, it was like, oh no, I did none of these things. I was completely non-integrated.
So I know we're almost out of time, but this person says, I have premature independence attachment style. What steps do you recommend to mindfully reattach to people?
Say that again. Oh,
I have premature independence attachment style. What steps do you recommend to mindfully reattach to people?
well, you have to become fully integrated yourself before you can learn to integrate with other people. So towards the end of my lecture, I kind of described going through a lot of like work of what are my feelings? Where did I learn where these feelings come from? How do I express them? A lot of work in shame and vulnerability. So I do a lot of stuff with that Brene Brown, kind of understanding and digging up what your shame is, defense mechanisms that kind of tie into that, understanding your story better, really getting into the mindful understanding of who you are and what your fears are. And then your ability to hold space and empathy and compassion for other people when they're sharing that kind of stuff with you. So,
and I think just like you being here and knowing this is how I am,
right.
and being willing, like it's going to feel really vulnerable to but it's going to be baby steps. I think, you just go, I'm going to try this, and you're going to have some success, and then it's, and maybe not some, but but then you're going to go, gosh, even if it feels a little uncomfortable, it also feels good. So, I think we want that, even if we're fearful of it. But I'm so glad you're here. So thank you all for your great questions and being here. And Kristin, thank you for sharing. This was a fantastic presentation on attachment, and lots of food for thought for me as well. So, and I'll plan to see you next month. But on KristinSnowden.com, you can go check out that group opportunity with Kristin. So I hope you do, and it will fill, and then Kristin will start another one. So
yeah, we'll see. Okay, well, thank you so much. I appreciate everybody showing up today and really seeking out community and support and education during such difficult, trying times. It's like all you really can do at this phase. So I just want to honor and acknowledge your strength and your willingness to kind of seek out help at a time where we all kind of want to get into the fetal position. So you're awesome. You are awesome humans.
And so are you, Kristin Snowden.
Oh, thanks. I try.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Take
Bye.
care.